Alright, so we are continuing with our Brahmastra revision in chapter 2 essays. We were done with essay 240 in the previous video. Now we are on essay 250. Consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statements. Alright. So very practical essay, very sensitive essay when it comes to the exams, essay 250. So you are the auditor of financial statements and you need to consider the laws and regulations in an audit of financial statements. Please understand, we are chartered accountants, auditor of financial statements. We are not company secretary in practice. So you can't expect us to verify every single law and regulation that is applicable to the entity. Then which laws a CA and auditor is going to focus upon? That is the first thing in essay 250, the applicability of essay 250 and its scope. Applicable financial reporting framework, this though in essay 200 also it has said that already, obviously we are going to verify it. So let us say schedule 3, AS, Ind AS, these things obviously we are going to verify. But apart from applicable financial reporting framework, that means the laws and regulations other than applicable financial reporting framework, like taxation law, like GST law, like payment of gratuity act, payment of bonus act, like pollution control, like environment protection, so like child labor. So how many laws am I going to verify? For that, the point is very simple. As an auditor, I will check that which laws have a material impact on the financial statements of the entity. If the law directly or indirectly is not going to have any material impact on the financial statements of the entity, then essay 250 is not applicable. In fact, no essay is applicable. I'm going to ignore those laws. However, if directly or indirectly laws have a material effect on the financial statements, then I'm going to consider it. Now, as you can see over here, for laws having material impact on the financial statements, there are two divisions: laws having direct effect and laws having indirect effect. Sir, how do you decide direct effect and indirect effect? That's a very beautiful question. Listen to me. Can I say that Income Tax Act, GST, these laws, they can directly determine some amounts and disclosures like tax provision, like TDS, like advance tax, like input tax credit, the disclosures on it. So can I say there are so many items in the financial statements which are directly calculated by some laws. That is called as laws having direct effect on the financial statements. So if they have a direct effect on the determination of material amounts and disclosures in the financial statements, then they are laws having direct effect. Taxation laws, GST laws, gratuity laws, labor, this wages act, bonus act. Right? So for these laws, I am going to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. All right. I will ask for the data. I will check that. I will obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. However, for laws having indirect effects, so now how to decide laws having indirect effect? See, let me tell you, child labor law. Do you think that child labor law calculates any amount in the financial statement? No. Do you think that Environment Protection Act calculates any amount in the financial statement? The answer is a big no. But can I say that these laws, if they are not followed, if they are not complied, then in that case it can lead to significant fines, penalties, revocation of licenses? Yes or no, sir? Yes, sir. That is why when the non-compliance will have a material effect, all right, those laws are called as indirect effect, where only the non-compliance will have a material effect. All right. So child labor or environment protection, such kind of laws. Now please understand, for these laws, don't straight away write obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. That is wrong English. Because for these laws, don't expect that I'm going to ask my article to climb upon the chimney and look at the kind of smoke that is getting erupted from there. Okay. I'm not going to ask my article to go to the factory and find out whether there is any child or not. Okay. So I am not going to get into this obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, but obviously I will perform some specified procedures which are given in essay 250. So it is very important that you are using the right English. So one more time, essay 250 is for such laws and regulations which can materially affect the financial statements. There are two types of effect. One is direct effect, indirect effect. For laws having direct effect, I am going to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. But for laws having indirect effect, I am going to perform some kind of specified procedures. All right. Now that is the coverage of essay 250. That is the clear scope of essay 250. Now listen to me very carefully. First, we have audit procedures over here. These are just basic audit procedures. Obviously, there are many examination questions from this, but these are basic audit procedures. After you identify some kind of non-compliance, or you have developed some doubt that there seems to be some non-compliance, or there is a show cause notice from some regulatory authorities, means you have already started developing doubt. Then in that case, there are some additional procedures to be performed. There are some additional procedures to be performed. Now in new syllabus module, there is a case study where by reading the case study, we can easily understand that there is already some heavy doubt that there seems to be some non-compliance. All right. Then in that case, straight away, this is the answer. But if they are asking you to just check the compliance with laws and regulations, and they're just asking you to talk about your basic responsibilities, then the answer is over here. Alright, so you will have to look at the last line of the question properly, whether they're just asking you to perform your basic audit procedures, or they've already given you some kind of non-compliance and they're asking you to perform some additional procedures over there. Alright, so that is the first thing that you should understand. Now, what are the basic audit procedures? Let me give them the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5. Okay. Arey Baba, in any entity, if I want to verify the compliances with laws and regulations, first I need to obtain an understanding of the legal framework that is applicable to the entity. And I also need to obtain understanding that what is the system implemented by the entity to comply with such laws and regulations. Now, over here, there has been one very repeatedly asked examination question about types of policies and procedures that can be implemented by the management. Now, tell me, if you are the CFO of the company, forget that you are the auditor, if you are the CFO of the company, how will you ensure that the laws and regulations are getting complied, they are getting followed? The first thing is that you will design your operation in such a manner that automatically the laws and regulations will be complied. If you look at my admission software, then automatically when you buy lectures from there, automatically GST and stuff will be reflected in the invoices. Design the operations in such a manner that automatic compliance is done. Alright. Then develop some kind of code of conduct to train your employees. Like I have trained my employees, they will never accept cash money straight away from you, alright, because there can be GST implications otherwise. Okay? Develop a code, train your employees. If needed, please take help of expert and engage the legal advisors. Maintain some kind of records that you are complying with laws and regulations, alright. Develop internal controls with respect to laws and regulations. So that is, these are the examples of types of policies and procedures. I repeat, these are the examples of types of policies and procedures that can be implemented by management to assist in prevention detection of non-compliance with laws and regulations. If you see, there is a code word over here, design legal RTI. Alright, and it's a very simple answer. Okay, so I have already explained this. So one more time, as an auditor, first I will try to obtain an understanding, alright, of the entity's legal framework and how entity is complying with that particular framework. Second, for the laws and regulations which have a direct effect, I repeat, for the laws and regulations which have a direct effect on compliance with, on the material amounts and disclosures, over there I am going to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. But for the laws and regulations which have an indirect effect, like child labor laws and stuff, please don't expect too much from me. I am not going to ask my article to climb the chimney and smell the smoke over there for the carbon emissions. No. I am just going to conduct inquiries of management and those charged with governance, whether they have complied with such laws and regulations or not. And what I am going to do is I am just going to check the communication between the entity and the regulatory authority, if any. So let me tell you, there is a very limited procedure when it comes to checking the non-compliances with the laws which can indirectly have a material effect on the financial statements. Alright. Then, can I say, as an auditor, we keep on performing so many procedures under so many different essays. Alright. Then in that case, this essay is asking you to remain alert that when you are performing procedures under different essays, you may find out that there is a possibility of non-compliance with laws and regulations. Alright. Now over here, there is one more examination question which has been very repeatedly asked. Alright. That can you please give me examples of indicators of non-compliance? Now please understand the difference between non-compliance and indicators of non-compliance. I am charging wrong GST, that is non-compliance. GST officers have visited my premises. If GST officers are visiting my premise, it does not mean that I have done something wrong. But if you are observing it, you will always feel that I have done something wrong. So it is just an indicator. It is not an example of non-compliance. So let me be very, very clear with you. They are not asking you to give examples of non-compliance. They are asking you to talk about indicators of non-compliance. All right. Now look at this. You should feel that these are indicators. Investigation by regulatory organizations, unusual payment in cash, some missing documents, complex transactions. All right, these are all indicators. These are not genuine non-compliances, but there is a possibility of non-compliance when you come across these matters. So you can just remember 3-4 out of this. All right, but these are indicators. Okay, don't end up giving examples of non-compliance over here. And then at the end, I am going to ask management to give me a written representation that whatever are the non-compliances with laws and regulations, you have disclosed it to me. In written representation, we will always get possessive. All right. So everyone over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First, I will try to obtain an understanding of the legal framework governing the entity. Second, then I will try to verify the compliances with laws and regulations which have a direct effect. For indirect effect, I'm just going to check I'm going to conduct some inquiries, and I'm just going to check the communication between the entity and the regulators, that is the correspondence. And while I'm performing procedures under other essays, I will remain alert and I will take a written representation. These are basic audit procedures. All right, when it comes to essay 250. However, if the question says, which is there in the new syllabus module, that you have already come across situations which indicates a non-compliance, or there is a suspected non-compliance, like the GST officers have raided the premises, they have already given that in the question, then in that case non-compliance has been identified or it is suspected, then the first thing that you are going to do is first try to obtain an understanding of what happened, what went wrong. All right, so obtain understanding of the nature of the act and the circumstances under which it has occurred. Try to calculate what can be the potential effect, possible effect on the financial statements. If there is a non-compliance, then what can be the effect on the financial statements? How much disclosure is required? What can be the amount to be recognized? What is the provisioning required and stuff? If auditor suspects that there could be non-compliance, if auditor suspects that there could be non-compliance, then discuss the matter with management, and where appropriate, those shall be comments. I think that discuss the matter point you can write easily, but don't write it as the first point. These are the first 2 points, and then this is the third point. Don't straight away come to easy points. All right. Now listen to me very carefully. When you end up discussing the matter with management and those charged with governance, what if management and DCWG are not giving you proper response? Normally, in any other essay, if management and DCWG, both of them are not cooperating with you, then we straight away normally say it is a limitation of scope of audit, modify opinion and stuff. But over here in this essay, even though management and DCWG are not cooperating with you, the essay goes one step ahead and says that obtain legal advice to understand whether entity is in compliance with or not. Because this is dealing with laws and regulations, ICA wants you to take more effort over here. I hope I am clear with this. All right. And after this also, if sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is not available, then obviously we are going to consider impact on our audit opinion. I hope I made myself very, very clear. So this is the answer in the new syllabus module case study, where I think they have given a case study of GST officials raiding the premises or something. All right. Now listen to me. The last point of essay 250. Non-compliance has already been identified. Now let us say they are talking about reporting the non-compliance. So when they talk about reporting responsibilities of the auditor with respect to non-compliance, they have divided into 3. Reporting non-compliance to TCWG, reporting non-compliance in the audit report, and reporting non-compliance to regulatory authorities. Let me tell you that I am going to report to regulatory authorities only if it is required by the laws and regulations. For example, if I find child labor, you don't expect me to report to Labor Ministry straight away. If there is a circular somewhere given by the Labor Ministry that auditor needs to report, then I will report. But don't expect that on my own or automatically by default I will end up reporting to regulatory authorities. No, boss. There has to be a law which says that I will have to report, then I will report. So my reporting to regulatory authorities will strictly be in accordance with the applicable laws and regulations. But let me tell you, this is the content given in essay 250. When you read professional ethics chapter, there is a concept of no collar. Now this was introduced from May 23 attempt onwards, so already there are old videos of mine of no collar which still remain relevant. If you read professional ethics chapter, there is a concept of no collar. In no collar, they have clearly given that if you are conducting audit of a listed entity whose net worth is greater than or equal to rupees 250 crores, alright, And if you think that there is an imminent obvious danger, so even though the requirement may not be given in the laws and regulations, but still we need to report. I'm not writing everything over here because it is there in my no-clar notes. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when you are going to communicate with the regulatory authorities, all right, we strictly do it only if it is required by the laws. However, if I'm conducting audit of a listed entity and stuff which is covered in the no-clar concept, then in that case, I may end up giving a report to the regulatory authorities, even though it may not be clearly given by the law, to prevent some kind of danger from happening, imminent danger from happening, imminent breach of law from happening. I hope I am clear with this. All right. Now listen to me. Reporting non-compliance to those charged with governance. Obviously, boss, if you're conducting audit of a company and if you find out non-compliance, it is your duty to report it to the board of directors and audit committee also. All right. But which kind of non-compliance? Last month, GST return was not filed on time, because of which company paid a penalty of 5,000 rupees. Arey Baba, not such kind of non-compliances. Obviously, non-compliances other than those that are clearly trivial. Look at this. So, non-compliance to TCWG are going to report, communicate the nature of non-compliance and its effect, but which non-compliance other than clearly trivial, other than clearly, minute non-compliances. If management is involved, then please communicate ASAP as soon as practicable. All right. If TCWG also appears to be involved, you told TCWG that child labor has been appointed by the management itself. Management says that from tomorrow TCWG says that from tomorrow bring your own children also. My God, even if TCWG is involved, then in that case, communicate with the next higher level authority. Next higher level authority could be, example is management of the parent entity. Example is management of the parent entity for the next higher level authority. All right. If there is no such higher level authority, or if you feel that that the communication may not be acted upon, then the last line is please obtain legal advice on what should be the further course of action. Mostly further course of action will be to communicate to the regulatory authorities only. Okay. Now when we talk about reporting non-compliance in the audit report, if you have obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence that there is a non-compliance, but management has not disclosed it properly in the financial statements, the penalty, the disclosures, they should write it properly. No? If they are not disclosing it properly in the financial statements, then qualified or adverse opinion. Now this I have taught in my first revision lecture of audit report. That boss, if there is an evidence available and there is a material misstatement which they are not rectifying, then qualified or adverse opinion. But let us say if sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is not available, then we end up with a qualified or disclaimer of an opinion. I hope I've made myself very, very clear for essay 250. It's a very interesting essay and there are clearly 4 points. First, the applicability. Second, the audit procedures, the basic procedures. Then what if non-compliance is suspected? And the last one is reporting responsibilities. Please ensure that whenever there is a question of taxation laws, labor laws, you do remember that there is an essay called as essay 250, consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statements. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. After essay 250, we have essay 260, communication with those charged with governance. Now listen to me, I will be very quick with this particular essay, which has been explained properly in the module, so we need to also discuss it properly. Now, whenever auditor comes across something important, we keep on saying this line, communicate with those charged with governance, communicate with those charged with governance, communicate with those charged with governance, alright. So essay 260 specifically for that what you're supposed to communicate with those charged with governance, how you're supposed to communicate with those charged with governance. Those points are covered over here. So finally, let us try to understand what is given in essay 260. Alright. In a very, very systematic manner, I have created this chart and concise content, but it covers everything. So please ensure that you are spreading this message to your friends and stuff, to like, subscribe these videos and share it as far as possible. Alright, because the right content needs to go to the student also. Alright. So look at this. Essay 260, communication with those charged with governance. First of all, who is those charged with governance? Arey Baba, if you just talk about, with in an example form, then board of directors, audit committee and stuff. But let me say it in English, that those charged with governance are the one who give strategic direction. They are the ones who are accountable. They are the ones who are supervising the management's processes. All right. So look at this. Who is TCWG? The one who is responsible for the processes, the one who is providing strategic direction. See, that is fine. But the core content is that in big companies, you will clearly see the difference between management and those charged with governance. In big companies, you have two-tier structure, where there is a clear difference between supervisory board, which is completely separate from the executive board. In listed entities, normally we see audit committee being completely different from the executive persons. All right. Then In mid-size entities, we see one tier board. That means management, TCWG, everything is being handled by the same board of directors. All right. And then in government entities specifically, what we see is that TCWG could be a person external to the entity. For example, if Indian Railways has a CEO, CFO and stuff, then who is TCWG of Indian Railways? Railway Ministry, which is a person external to the entity. All right. So please be careful with these 3 points about who is those charged with governance. Second, matters to be communicated with those charged with governance. What are the matters to be communicated? Let me tell you, there are 4 matters. So let me number them. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is just the code word. I will connect with that code word later on. First matter to be communicated with those charged with governance. Hello. Why is this content of matters very important? Because these matters in future, it could be key audit matters. Remember, key audit matters are selected from matters communicated with those charged with governance, correct? And that is why you should focus on the content properly. The very first matter to be communicated with those charged with governance is about auditors' responsibilities in relation to audit of financial statements. But listen to me. When you were getting appointed as an auditor, and let us say you had signed the letter of engagement and you had discussed it with those charged with governance itself, then there is no need to separately communicate auditors' responsibilities. Please understand, if you were appointed and your whole scope was discussed with TCWG itself, then they are already aware about what is your responsibility. But let us say that your scope and all discussions were done with the CFO of the company. Then the audit committee chairman may not be aware about that. And that is why if the letter of engagement has been discussed with the management, then you should forward a copy of that letter of engagement to those charged with governance. So please read this English. If letter of engagement as per SA 210 has been discussed and agreed with TCWG, then there is no separate communication required as per SA 260. However, if letter of engagement has been agreed with management, then forward copy of such letter to those charged with governance. I hope I have made myself very, very clear. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Second, we are going to communicate planned scope and timing of audit with TCWG. See, please understand, even ICI communicates the syllabus with you and then it conducts the exam. All right. All of a sudden, you cannot give a surprise. So obviously, you will have to communicate some discussions on materiality, internal controls, some discussions on what can be key audit matter, some discussions on whether you need an expert, some discussions on risk of material misstatement, which areas are of a high risk. So you will communicate MICR. All right, at the time of planned scope and timing of audit, you will have to communicate these things with those charged with governance. Obviously, you will not compromise the effectiveness of audit, but at least some idea they should have about the audit that you are going to conduct. And this you have been seeing in different essays, significant findings from audit. Whenever we come across something sensitive, we always talk about communication with those charged with governance. Significant findings from audit. Okay. Now, if you see, I've given a code word over here, wo marg. Okay. I'll talk about that code word later, but let us understand the points properly. See, when you're talking about significant findings, it has to sound significant also. So you will discuss accounting practices with those charged with governance. Some discussions on high quality discussions on accounting policies, estimates, disclosures, all right. Such kind of discussions. That is called as qualitative aspects of accounting practices. What it is called as qualitative aspects of accounting practices. Then you are going to discuss if there is any difficulty that you faced during the audit of financial statements. Arey, come on, man, various types of restrictions created by the management. Management is not providing timely data. Management is delaying. Management is not allowing us to send confirmation requests. Management is not ready to make going concern assessment. Management is restricting us. All of those points can come over here. Difficulties encountered during the course of audit. Sir, why are you explaining every single point? Because there can be an examination question separately on each point. So that is why over here I have given some idea of what kind of points you can write over there. Hello? Yes. Then if there is a modification in your report, qualified opinion, adverse opinion, disclaimer of opinion, emphasis of matter, idli vada, medu vada, other matter, key audit matter. So the such kind of modifications also, please, you communicate with those charged with governance. Then whatever discussions you are doing with the management, but if you feel that those matters were really important, all right, like some judgmental matters, like matters related to your appointment fees and stuff, all right, then you can always discuss it with those charged with governance. Matters subject to discussion with the management, significant events, transactions, appointment and fees related matters, matters on which there was some disagreement, all right. Then whatever are the written representations that you are requesting, if management is not giving it to you, then you will have to report it to those charged with governance, and any other matter which you feel is relevant to the financial reporting process. So wo Mard. Alright. So please remember this code word for significant findings from audit. And then the fourth matter is about auditor's independence. This is very, very sensitive for MCQ. Please be careful. In case of listed entities, you have to compulsorily give a written declaration. I repeat, in case of listed entities, you have to compulsorily give a written declaration in writing. That boss, as an engagement partner, you have to write it that me, myself, my team, my firm, my network firm, all of us are independent. But listen to me very carefully. You also have to disclose that myself, my firm, my network firm, if any of these entities are providing other services to the client apart from audit, then how much money you are earning from those services, you'll have to disclose it. Look at this. Team, firm has complied with independence. Then all relationships and other matters between the firm, network firm and the entity. In auditor's professional judgment, which you can have an effect on independence. This shall include total fees charged during the period covered by the financial statements for audit and non-audit services. And whatever related safeguards, means whatever corrective action you have taken to eliminate the threats, alright, you can talk about that. For example, in listed entity, normally we take this corrective action that from March to May, my team will not trade in the listed shares in order to ensure that there is no insider trading, alright. So that is safeguard. So everyone over here, 4 matters. Come on, what are those 4 matters to be communicated? Now this is the code word. Plan and find your responsible independence. Plan and find responsible independence. Plan and find responsible independence. Alright. So everyone over here, planned scope and timing of audit. Find means findings. Responsibilities means responsibilities of the auditor. And then independence, written declaration. Now listen to me. As I told you, in essay 260, we broadly have 3 points. First is who is those charged with governance. Second is the matters to be communicated. Third is the manner of communication. You know what? For the first and the fourth point, you have already understood the manner of communication, because in the first point for responsibilities, I told you that if letter of engagement has been discussed with management and not TCWG, then forward a copy. So that is manner of communication. In fourth point, it is about independence. You have to give a written declaration. So that is a manner of communication. But in the second and the third point, preferably we communicate in writing. But obviously written, it is not possible to include all the communication, all the points in the written communication. So in second and third point, even if 1 or 2 matters here and there you have communicated orally, then it is okay. Please remember this for MCQ. In second and third point, in this second content and third content, if you have communicated 1 or 2 matters orally, it is okay. It's not a mandatory written communication that you are supposed to do with those charged with governance. I hope I've made myself very clear. So that is manner of communication, which is given over here. Alright, so you have to discuss with those charged with governance what will be the form and form and extent of communication, the timing of communication. Alright, and as I told you, for significant findings, generally you communicate in writing, but written communication need not include all the matters. Alright, and for independence, compulsorily you have to communicate in writing only. Alright, and then you have to evaluate whether the two-way communication between both of you is adequate or not, because if 2 people are not communicating properly in the relationship, then it can lead to reassessment of risk of material misstatement, even in your personal life. Okay. And then in module, there is one boring paragraph which says that please explain the benefits of communication, the significance of communication. Are yaar, even in your personal life, what is the benefit of communication? If 2 people are communicating properly, then both of them can understand each other. Okay. Look at this. An effective 2-way communication is important in assisting. After marriage, it is important not to communicate. Then you can understand each other. Look at this. Effective 2-way communication is important in assisting understanding matters related to audit. So TCWG can understand auditor in a better manner, and there can be a constructive and working relationship. Alright. TCWG can fulfill their responsibility because auditor will report important matters to them. So TCWG can fulfill the responsibility. And then it will help auditor also to get the relevant information. So auditor can coordinate better with TCWG, TCWG can coordinate better with the auditor, and both of them can marry also. Right? So significance of communication with those charged with governance, we are through with that. Yes sir, yes sir. So that is your essay 260, communication with those charged with governance. That is your essay 260, communication with those charged with governance. I hope I am clear with that. Now we start the discussion on essay 299. That is joint audit of financial statements. Only 1 page, but very, very sensitive. Alright. So if you focus, I am so sure that you will end up scoring some marks. Now at financial level, I am not worried whether students are aware about the concept of joint audit or not. Obviously, students are aware about the concept of joint audit. So let us say that you are conducting audit of X Limited and ABC firm being represented by A, PQR firm being represented by P, and EFG firm being represented by E. So the APE, alright, all three of them are going to conduct joint audit of X Limited. Alright. Now there are three discussions which are documented very well in the module. First, all three joint auditors will have to come together, alright, and they will have to develop a joint audit plan. So that is one point over there. Second, about responsibility division. Who will be responsible for which areas, alright. And the last one being what you are going to write in your joint audit report, the reporting consideration point. Alright. So the first one, joint audit planning and risk assessment. Let us say if there are three joint auditors. From each of the joint auditor, there has to be key members of the team who will participate in joint audit planning. You know, the most important point in joint audit plan is to decide to divide the areas properly. So identify division of audit areas. Right? However, let me tell you, they can ask you a proper 5 marks question, and that can be a little boring question. And the last line of the question will be this line. The requirement of the question will be this line. Factors to be considered in development of joint audit plan and joint audit strategy. What are the factors to be considered? Let me tell you, total there are 5 points. But please do not read those 5 points from here. Then why you have printed? Wait, I will reduce your effort. These 5 points are copy paste from essay 300. In essay 300, we will discuss audit strategy. In that audit strategy discussion, we will have a discussion on factors to be considered. In that factors discussion, we will have a discussion of 5 points. Those 5 points have been copy pasted over here. Alright. Only one point is differently worded because this is essay is about joint audit. Alright, so this point is a little sensitive point about identifying the division of audit areas. All other points word by word have been copied from essay 300. So when you are in essay 300, I'll give you the code word and everything to by heart those points. So in essay 300, factors to be considered in establishing overall audit strategy, copy paste over here and you get your marks. Alright, okay. But wait, what is interesting in essay 299? All other points are very sensitive. Alright, look at this. All the joint auditors will have to create a work allocation document. So if they are going to divide the areas, then they'll have to do it in writing. They'll have to create a work allocation document. All the joint auditors are going to sign it, alright, and this has to be communicated with those charged with governance. So work allocation document to be signed by all the joint auditors and to be communicated with those charged with governance. Are you getting my point? Yes, sir. Otherwise, what will happen if you have not created such kind of document? And if you have just orally divided the work, then oral division is not considered as any division. Then both of you will be responsible for entire financial statement, jointly and severally responsible. So if you want to be responsible only for your own allocated areas, it is better that you sign a work allocation document and communicate it with those charged with governance. Then this can be your highly sensitive MCQ point, and even this one. All the joint auditors will have to obtain a common engagement letter. Common engagement letter. See, appointment letter can be separate, right? But the final engagement letter has to be common engagement letter. Then there has to be a common written representation letter also. All right. So at the end of the audit, when you take written representation from the management, even that will be common. So this can be your MCQ, common engagement letter and a common written representation letter. All right. Now everyone over here. Responsibility division. Please focus over here. Let us say that this X Limited is being audited by this A, P and E. So X Limited is being audited by A, P and E. Let us say A is going to conduct audit of income, P is going to conduct audit of expense, and E is going to conduct audit of asset and liability. Now the areas have been divided. Once the areas are divided, every single joint auditor will be responsible only for his own particular area. That means P is not responsible for income, asset, liability. E is not responsible for income and expenses. Alright. Everyone is responsible for their own allocated areas. Let me be very clear that A is under no duty to ask P how he has done the work. P is under no duty to ask E and A. No. You are just responsible for your own area. The other joint auditor may not even review the work performed by other joint auditors. Alright. Look at this. Please remember this properly. Individually responsible for areas allocated to each joint auditor. So every single joint auditor will be responsible for his own allocated area. Then for that particular area, determining the nature, timing and extent of procedure, studying the internal control system, everything will be your own responsibility. In fact, every single joint auditor is allowed to assume that the other joint auditors have performed work as per standards in auditing. You are not required to even review the work performed by other joint auditor. Alright. So once the area is divided, it's divided. But for the areas which are not divided, obviously one for all for one, all of them will have a joint and several responsibility. Now there is a very, very interesting case study in the module which I've been giving as an example since years, but finally in this particular module they've included it. Let us say A, P and E, all three are joint auditors. Let us say they decided that stock audit will be a common area. Now they all three of them came together and they have done proper planning. Planning was done in the most appropriate manner. All the points of standards on auditing, accounting standards, everything were taken into consideration for stock audit, and they developed a proper plan. Then A was given 4 locations, P was given 6 locations and E was given 7 locations. Now P and E, their team properly audited the inventory, but A's team was negligent. Later on, let us say fraud was identified in the area of these 4 locations. Who do you think will be responsible? Only A or A, P and E, all three of them? The answer is only A. Because even though stock audit was common area, tell me, their planning was proper? Yes. Execution will always remain individual responsibility. Now P cannot appoint 2 James Bond behind A, whether A is doing his job properly or not. So execution will always remain individual responsibility. I repeat, execution will always remain individual responsibility. So please be careful. For audit work which is not divided for common audit areas, planning for common audit areas is joint responsibility. Execution will always remain individual responsibility. Look at this. Decisions taken by all the joint auditors under audit planning for common audit areas concerning the nature, timing and extent of procedures to be performed by each joint auditor. Execution remains individual responsibility. Alright. And on this there is a wonderful case study in the new syllabus module. Then C point. Let us say I am responsible for income, you are responsible for expense audit. Now when I was conducting audit of income, I came across some matters which I think are fraudulent. I reported it to you. You could have easily ignored the mail, but no, you participated. You could have easily said, Pragnesh, this is your area, you look after it. But no, you participated. Then you convinced me that there is no fraud in these particular invoices. 2 years down the line, fraud was identified in these invoices itself. I told ICI, mother promise, I told this idiot that there is a fraud. But this idiot convinced me that there is no fraud. ICI is going to slap both of us and both of us will be held responsible. Because I sent you an email. You agreed on that. And both of us came to a particular conclusion. So matters brought to notice by one joint auditor and on which there is an agreement among all the joint auditors. I repeat, matters brought to the notice by one joint auditor and on which there is an agreement amongst all the joint auditors. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Alright. Then D, E and F, very general points, but I will still cover it in short. Boss, at least both of us should come together and check whether schedule 3 has been followed or not, even though we have divided the areas. But at the end, during the presentation and disclosure stage, we should come together and check whether the law, AFRF, at least the presentation and disclosure has been followed properly or not. Alright, so that will be a common area. Then both of us, when we are drafting the audit report, we need to at least ensure that audit report is fulfilling the requirements of essays and law. Ensuring that audit report complies with laws and essays. Alright. But good questions can be asked from B and C point. Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Alright. Now, over here, reporting considerations. So at the end of the day, all the joint auditors are expected to come together, alright, and draft a proper joint audit report. So the ideal happy ending will be that all the joint auditors come together and sign a joint audit report containing an opinion. However, if there is a difference, Let us say that A says qualified opinion and P and E say clean opinion. Then A will develop a separate report and P and E will develop a separate report. Every single auditor will not give a separate report. Alright. Now, if there are two such audit reports, let me tell you, there is no majority rule. Huh? If A says qualified opinion and P and E say clean opinion and they are not able to reconcile their differences, then there will be two audit reports, one by A, the second one by P and E. But when there are separate audit reports, the shareholders, the readers of audit report will be confused to hell. Alright. And in order to ensure that the confusion is reduced and to bring more clarity, A will have to give a reference to P and E's audit report and E will have to give a reference to A's audit report. Both of them will have to give a cross reference. Alright. Both of them will have to give a cross reference so that if shareholder is reading the audit report of P and E, at least he will go through the report of A also by looking at the reference, and vice versa. When the shareholder is looking at the audit report of A, he will at least go through the audit report of P and E also if the cross reference is properly given. Alright. And this cross reference will be given in other matter paragraph. I repeat, this cross reference will be given in other matter paragraph. Now you can just read once, you will automatically come to know. Alright. Look at this. Where joint auditors are in disagreement with regards to with regards to opinion or any matters to be covered by the audit report, they shall express their opinion in a separate audit report. Right? A joint auditor is not bound by the views of the majority of the joint auditors regarding the opinion or the matters to be covered in the audit report. And in such audit report, there will be a cross reference, such a separate reference to the audit report issued by other joint auditors, and that will be given in other matter paragraph. I want a confirmation. Are you through with this? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that marks the end of the discussion of Essay 299 also. Just a minute. Essay 299 is also over here, over here. The last essay in chapter 2, that is essay 402, a little technical one, but I will make it very simple for you, don't worry. Audit considerations in relation to an entity using service organization. Now, if you focus for 2 minutes, with a calm mind, then you will come to know how to apply essay 402 in exams. All right, listen to me. Let us say that you are conducting audit of X Limited. Okay, audit of financial statements of X Limited, and let us say you are CA. Now, when you tried obtaining an understanding of X Limited, you came to know that X Limited has outsourced certain activities, right, to Y Limited. You went in further details that what kind of activities have been outsourced. All right, you came to know that they have outsourced inventory management, they have outsourced payroll processing, salary processing, inventory management at 75 locations, and they have outsourced further publicity work. They have outsourced housekeeping work, housekeeping of, of the documents and stuff. I'm not talking about sweeping and cleaning and stuff. All right. Okay. Now you are CA, you are an auditor of financial statements. Please use your common sense and tell me, when such kind of activities have been outsourced, don't you think that you will be worried about how Y Limited is providing the services to X Limited? Yes or no, sir? Yes, sir. So obviously CA will be worried about how Y Limited is providing services to X Limited. He will be worried about that. But let me tell you very clearly, you are an auditor of financial statements. So you are bloody not worried about all the activities that have been outsourced. Otherwise you will go mad. Trust me, if you apply your common sense, you will come to know that you will be extremely worried about the first couple of activities. No, even third activity and fourth activity, the payment that X Limited is going to do to Y Limited for providing these services is a material payment. But why you will be worried extremely about first couple of activities? Because these activities, these services, they can impact day-to-day accounting system of X Limited. These are services which are relevant to FR process, financial reporting process of X Limited. Publicity and housekeeping is not something that will impact day-to-day accounting system. But obviously inventory management and payroll processing is something that will impact day-to-day accounting system of X Limited. Now in exams we can't keep on using X Limited, Y Limited and stuff. So let me start giving them the names. Y Limited is providing services to X Limited. That is why Y Limited is called as service organization. X Limited is using the services of Y Limited. That is why X Limited is called as the user entity. You are the auditor of X Limited. That is why you are called as user auditor. Now tell me, if you want to actually obtain an understanding of how Y Limited is providing these services to X Limited, right, then in that case you may need help of some more people. So what happens is, sometimes Y Limited may appoint someone else, Mr. B, who will specifically work to provide assurance on controls over the services provided. All right. And this Mr. B, because he is getting appointed by service organization, Mr. B will be called as the service auditor. Mr. B will be called as the service auditor. But let me add some more twist in the story. So X Limited has outsourced inventory management at 75 locations to Y Limited. But Y Limited has presence only at 50 locations. Therefore, Y Limited decides to further outsource inventory management at 25 locations. So this is for X Limited's inventory only. At 25 locations, they are deciding to further outsource this to Z Limited. So if I give you a contract and if you give it to someone else, then that is subcontracting. Right? So that is why Z Limited will be called as sub-service organization. That is why Z Limited will be called as sub-service organization. Now this whole chart, this whole diagram should be very clear in your mind. Only then you will be able to understand what we are discussing over here. And the answers are, you can deal with them, provided you give 5-6 minutes with a calm mind to understand this. All right. Now listen to me. What is the title of essay 402? Audit of an entity using service organization. For old syllabus also I had short revision lectures. Then why I am shooting revision lectures again for the new syllabus? Because some small changes that have occurred. In the old syllabus, I was not worried too much beyond this point in this essay. But now I am worried. Listen to me very carefully. Look at the title of essay 402, Audit of an entity using service organization. So you are conducting audit of user entity which is using the services of service organization. Then essay 402. But if the last line of the question says that you are not the user auditor, let us say the question flips. And let us say they make you Mr. B in that question. That means you are the service auditor and not the user auditor. Then let me tell you, then in that case, the standard will change. It is SAE 3402. Standards on Assurance Engagement 3402, where service auditor is given the guidance on how to provide a report on assurance of the controls of the service organization. So if you are writing from the angle of CAA, then SA 402. All right. Normally they will ask you from angle of CAA only, but exceptionally it is possible that they may ask you from the angle of Mr. B, all right, who is the service auditor. Then SAE 3402, because of this new standards series that has been added from new syllabus onwards, I am worried about it. I hope I am clear with this. Yes or no, sir? Yes, sir. All right. Now listen to me. Don't forget your character over here. You are the user auditor, auditor of financial statements of user entity. All right. What will be your objective? What will be your objective? Your objective will be first to understand the nature and significance of the services that are being outsourced. What kind of services service organization is providing, and how important it is for the user entity's internal control. So first you will try to obtain an understanding. Trying to obtain an understanding means performing which procedure? Risk assessment procedure. Trying to obtain an understanding means performing which procedure? Risk assessment procedure. Then Once you have obtained complete understanding, then you will perform further audit procedures. Alright? The testing part, the test of details, test of controls and stuff. I hope I am clear with this. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this will act like your standard introduction when there is a question on essay 402. Now let me be very clear. You have to adopt some techniques now on how to write the answer. Otherwise, you will go mad in this essay. So when there is a question of outsourcing, all right, and the last line says that you just have to obtain an understanding, all right, you don't have to check, you just have to obtain an understanding. Then let me tell you, either it is going to be from this page. So if you see, this whole page is of risk assessment procedure. So I'm just giving the numbers 1, 2, 3. So one more time. If the last line of the question says that you have to obtain an understanding, then it has to be from these 3 points. All right. Now you will have to read the question further. Understanding of what? If the question says that you just have to understand that how user entity is using the services of service organization. How user entity is using the services of service organization. And let me tell you, in the new syllabus module, they have given the question on this particular box itself. All right. Then the answer is very simple. In fact, this question is one of their favorites since last 10-12 years. Okay? So understanding on how user entity uses the services of service organization, then the answer is going to be very simple. You are just trying to obtain an understanding of what kind of functions have been outsourced, what is the effect on the user entity's internal control, how material are the transactions that are being processed, what is the contract between both of them. All right, but let me make it very simple for you. I'm going to give you a code word for this. But logically, I've already explained what we are talking about. SIM relates to contract. S. First of all, you will try to understand the significance of the services which are being provided by the service organization. Then you will try to understand how the user entity and service organization, both of them are interacting with each other. Right? How both of their departments are connected with each other. Then you will try to obtain an understanding of how material transactions are being processed by the service organization. Then you will try to understand what is the relationship between both of them. Is it a holding subsidiary relationship? What is the relationship between both of them? Then you will read the contractual terms. So you get your 5 points, right? And the matter is over. This is how you will try to obtain an understanding of how user entity is using the services of service organization. Listen to me. Let us say that the last line of the question talks about understanding. But then the question is little different. Tell me, logically everyone agrees that, boss, you are not worried about all the services that are outsourced. You're worried only if the service is relevant to the financial reporting process. That means if it is relevant to the accounting system of X Limited. How do you decide that? How do you decide that? Exactly. That is the question. Everyone over here. How will you determine? How will you determine whether a service organization services are a part of user entity's information system, including related business processes relevant to financial reporting? Don't worry, you can replace this whole phrase by just 2 words: accounting system. See, it is very logical. Don't skip this essay. Right? So how will you determine whether whatever services service organization is providing, whether it is relevant for the accounting system of user entity or not? First of all, tell me yes or no. If service organization is, if the service is provided by service organization, if it affects material transactions, don't you think it is relevant for us? Yes. So the first factor, if these services affect any of the following, if it affects material transactions, it is relevant for us. Then if it affects any of the accounting process, see, whenever we talk about accounts, the transaction is first initiated, then recorded, then corrected, processed, then reported to the general ledger, then to the financial statements. Now whenever we talk about accounting system, if any of this area is getting affected, then those services are relevant, important for me. If it affects any of the accounting procedure, like initiating, recording, processing, correcting, then it is important for me. Right? Then if the accounting records, for example, let us say my admission process is being looked after by some other company, then the fee receipt will get generated over there. Then as an auditor, it is going to be very important for you. If the accounting records are generated at the service organization, then it is very important for me. Then, in my example, in this particular example, we have outsourced inventory management. whether inventory is sellable, non-sellable, whether there is a defect in the goods, whether the goods have become obsolete, expired products. Who is going to look after that? Service organization. Then obviously the service organization becomes important because it is capturing events and conditions that are important. If service organization is impacting any part of the last finalization process, financial reporting process, when the financial statements are prepared, then it is important if it is affecting any of this part. And boss, if service organization has a control over journal entries, then it is extremely important for us. So let me also give you code word for this. SP records capturing of financial journalist. So there was a journalist who was talking about financial items, financial terms and economy and stuff. So superintendent of police has captured that journalist because SP was not able to understand that. So SP records capturing of financial journalist. Look at this. S for significant transactions, P for procedures, records capturing of financial journalist. All right. So you'll have to be very careful about what is the last line of the question, what is the requirement of the question, and accordingly you will vomit your answer. Now listen to me very carefully. Let us say that normally in practical life we try to first ask questions to the user entity itself because we are the auditor of user entity. But let us say if we are not able to obtain sufficient information from the user entity, then in that case don't straight away say modify opinion. No. Please try to get a report from service auditor. Please try to get a report from service auditor. Now there are two types of report from service auditor. Why I have written type 1 report over here, that also I'll tell you. Type 1 report is a report where service auditor will just give you an opinion on design and description of the controls. That means service auditor will just tell you that listen, Y Limited has implemented a software and these are the details of the software. That's it. Service auditor will not test that software and give us an opinion whether it is functioning effectively or not. Are you getting my point? Okay. So that is called as type 1 report. In type 2 report, he will not only give us the design and description, but he will also test the controls and give us an opinion whether the controls are functioning effectively or not. So look at this. Type 1 report is a report provided by service auditor on design and description of the controls. Type 2 report is a report by service auditor on design, description and operating effectiveness of the controls at service organization. So when we are performing risk assessment procedure, we don't need type 2 report. We just want to know about design and description. That is why I've written type 1 report over here. So type 1, type 2 is one of their favorite for MCQs. Please be careful. All right. Then if one more thing that you can do is you can get into a conference call, with the service organization. Look at this, contacting service organization through user entity to obtain specific information. If the location is good, you can even visit over there, picnic, visiting service organization to obtain an understanding. Or you can send some another CA on your behalf to get the understanding using another auditor to perform procedures at service organization. So let me be very clear, if user auditor cannot obtain sufficient understanding from user entity straight away, please don't say modify opinion. There are 4 other options that you can read the report of service auditor, you can contact service organization through user entity, you can visit service organization to obtain understanding, or you can use another auditor to perform those procedures. Alright. Now risk assessment procedures, you saw that we take the help of service auditor if required. So there are 2 types of report, type 1, type 2 report. Type 2 report is useful for further audit procedures because it will also give you an opinion and stuff. Now there can be another question only on this type 1, type 2 report. Tell me, whenever we are using the work performed by others, can we blindly rely upon them? No, sir. So when we are taking type 1, type 2 report from the service auditor, don't you think that we will have to go through the date period covered, whether the report is of a relevant period or not? We'll have to see the scope of work of service auditor, what is the coverage of the work of service auditor, whether he has performed adequate procedures, whether his report gives us sufficient and appropriate evidence or not. And if it is a type 2 report, then I'll have to see the results of test of controls also, yes or no, sir. Yes. So come on, man, whenever we are using the work performed by others, we cannot blindly rely upon them. So students can easily understand A, B, C and E point. The only difficult point is D, quack. Complementary user entity controls. Listen, now what is this complementary user entity controls? Don't get irritated by difficult words. Alright, maintain your patience. Tell me, if X Limited is providing outsourcing, payroll processing has been outsourced, right, to Y Limited, then don't you think that X Limited will have to give employee data to Y Limited? Yes or no, sir? Yes, sir. X Limited will provide employee data to Y Limited? Yes or no, sir? Yes. Y Limited will assume that X Limited has given correct data? Yes. Then on this particular employee data, who will implement the internal controls? X Limited or Y Limited? X Limited, boss. So Y Limited is providing certain services, but Y Limited is assuming that there will be some complementary controls which even user entity is going to implement. So everyone, complementary user entity controls, quack, 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 quack. Complementary user entity controls is nothing but controls implemented by user entity to provide accurate data to the service organization. Complementary user entity controls is nothing but controls implemented by user entity to provide accurate data to the service organization. I hope I have made myself very, very clear. Complementary user entity controls will be tested by whom? User auditor or service auditor? Arey, user auditor, because these controls are implemented by user entity. Yes, yes. Okay. Then this service auditor's report is going to be very helpful. In which areas? Advantages of service auditor's report. It will help us in understanding the controls at service organization. It will help us in understanding how sub-service organization is connected with service organization. It will help us in understanding the entire flow of the transaction. It will help us in understanding whether the controls are operating effectively or not. Arey, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. So one more time, when you look at the last line of the question, if the question is about understanding, then it is from risk assessment procedure. You'll have to see 1, 2, 3, which point they have questioned. If the question says that can you rely upon the service auditor's report, then it is from this particular box, that if I want to rely upon the service auditor's report, I'll have to go through these points. Right? Then if the question says respond to the risk, test, check, that means further audit procedures, obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, that means further audit procedures. All right. So everyone over here, in further audit procedures, the first thing that I'm going to do is, first I will look at user entities records and I will try to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence from there. If I'm not happy with the user entities records, then I may consider getting a confirmation from service organization or sending some another auditor at service organization and performing the procedures. This is for test of details. But when it comes to test of controls, tell me, in case of inventory management, will you be satisfied with just staying at user entity? No. You will feel like visiting the service organization. You will feel like visiting the service organization. Acha, when it comes to payroll processing, salary calculations, that you can finish easily by staying in the office of user entity. But sometimes you may have to go to the service organization because user auditor is expecting controls at service organization to operate effectively. The best example over here is the inventory management outsourcing. Now, if you want to obtain the evidence whether the service organization controls are operating effectively or not, then in that case, please try to obtain a type 2 report. All right. Because it will give you the evidence on design, description, operating effectiveness, everything. You can yourself visit service organization and perform test of controls over there. Or you can ask someone else to visit on your behalf. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, let us talk about sub-service organization. My dear friend, tell me, Z Limited is also performing an important task, yes or no, sir? Yes, sir. But you are CAA. You are straight away not going to go to Z Limited. You will read the report of service auditor. Now, there are two possibilities. Either service auditor report covers the controls of Z Limited, or service auditor report excludes the controls of Z Limited. If service auditor report covers Y Limited plus Z Limited both, then it is called as inclusive approach. If service auditor report covers only Y Limited and it excludes Z Limited, then it is called as carve out approach. If that is the case, if it is a carve out approach, then obviously CAA will be disappointed. Then user auditor, what he can do is, whatever we have discussed for Y Limited will also be applicable for Z Limited. That means you can visit Z Limited, you can discuss through user entity with Z Limited, you can send someone else on your behalf at Z Limited. So everyone over here, come on, I am now going to quickly read, I am done with the concept. If service organization uses a sub-service organization, The service auditor's report may either include or exclude the controls of sub-service organization in its type 1 or type 2 report. The methods of reporting are known as inclusive method and carve-out method. If the type 1 or type 2 report excludes the controls at sub-service organization, excludes, and if you feel that the services provided by sub-service organization are extremely relevant, then in that case, user auditor is supposed to apply SA 402 at sub-service organization. You can visit over there, you can send someone else. All of that is going to be applicable over here. Am I clear with this? Yes, sir. Now listen to me. $1 million question. Can you give a reference to the work of service auditor in your own audit report? Can I write the name of service auditor in my audit report? Listen to me. If there is a law which says that you will have to give the reference, then you will have to give the reference. Then there is no choice. Then you must provide reference. There is a separate paragraph, statutory reporting requirements. There you are going to provide the reference. But if reference is not required by law, listen to me. If reference is not required by law, then you will have to go through this very carefully. You will have to check whether you have given a modified opinion, in relation to the matters referred to service auditor. Let us say that you are talking about payroll processing, and there is some incorrect calculation of TDS and stuff, which service auditor has pointed out. That is the reason that you are giving a modified opinion. So tell me, you are giving modified opinion exactly with respect to the matter which was given to that service auditor. Alright. Then in that case, there is something called as basis for modified opinion paragraph. In order to explain why you have given modified opinion, you may have to refer to the work of service auditor. So if service auditor provides consent, see, you cannot forcefully refer someone's name, without their consent. So if service auditor provides consent, then user auditor may, not compulsory, may provide reference. Alright. If it is required by law, then you must provide reference. But what is the $1 million point? That if reference is not required by law, and if you have given an unmodified opinion, then you are not allowed to give any reference. You are not allowed to give any reference to the service auditor. Please get this thing in your head. Voluntarily, you just can't keep on writing any Tom, Dick and Harry reference over there. Then you should write even articles reference, vouching verification done by article and stuff. Alright. Now listen to me. Whenever you are giving a reference in both these cases, you have to state very clearly that this reference is only for clarification. Such reference does not reduce user auditor's responsibility towards audit opinion. You have to state it very, very clearly that this reference is only for clarity. Such reference does not reduce user auditor's responsibility towards audit opinion. Now this is one of their favorite for MCQs. Please be careful. Alright. So I am very clear. If the question is on outsourcing, and if you have to think from the angle of CAA, that is the auditor of financial statements of user entity, it is SA 402, and there are only these many questions that are possible, so please do it properly. Alright. And if you want to think from the angle of service auditor, then it is SA 3402. For that, you please refer the later revision series. Alright. Thank you so much. So that is your chapter 2 essays in entirety. All practical questions are possible from all of these essays. Thank you so much.